We start recording. Jai Shimanarayana, Jai
Jai
Jagannath.
Shimanarayana Mataji, my obeisances to you. Thank you
Jai,
very much
thank
for
you for
inviting me today.
thank you for giving me this opportunity. Today we are discussing about a very important subject.
Yes,
So
Mataji, a
please
very important
introduce it.
subject. Yes, I wanted to discuss a very important subject, a subject that's perhaps misunderstood. It's perhaps one of the most widely publicized aspects of Hinduism
Yeah,
in the West, and that is one of Varna, or as people call it, caste, unfortunately, erroneously. And
yeah,
we most Hindus understand that, in fact. Well, I think they understand that. In fact, Varna is the original form of this of a structured order to society. I think most Hindus understand that there's four aspects to it: Brahmanas, the priestly order, the Kshatriyas, the warriors, the Vaishyas, the merchants, and the Shudras, the laborers. And there's all sorts of
yeah.
misunderstandings regarding the fifth Varna, and there's also
Oh, yeah,
similar
yeah,
and there's also similar misunderstandings, Mataji, about Dalits, etc., that come into it all the time. Particularly opponents of Hinduism like to throw that in. And then, Mataji, I'd like you to talk a little bit
yeah.
about another area, which is how this is played out in modernity. What exactly are these roles? Are Brahmanas simply people who sit there reciting the Vedas and teaching, or is it more nuanced than that? What is the overlap between the various Varnas? And also, Mataji, if you can, um, talk a little bit about the average person sitting there like me. How do we inculcate our Varna? Is there any merit in defining Varna in the Kali Yuga in 2026? So I know I've said a lot here, but
Yeah.
these are, I think, the important questions behind this subject. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. So over to you.
Yeah, okay. So we'll start by clarifying one thing that in Gita, Krishna starts by saying, okay, we have here 1812, which is the specific duties of the Varnas. And then we have in chapter, with Chatur Varnyam Maya Shistam, the famous, here. Okay, Chatur Varnyam. We have 413. So the 413, we have the first answer to your last questions. So we start from the end. If the Varnas are still applicable and relevant today.
Yes, absolutely, Mataji. Because
So,
so
yeah,
many of us simply ask ourselves, what Varna are we? We're already in work, we're already doing jobs, we're already sort of in studies, and we ask ourselves, is it worth trying to find our Varna in such crude terminology, Mataji, if that makes sense?
okay. So let's start one by one. We'll address all the points. Now, first of all, as you already correctly mentioned, Varna doesn't mean caste, and caste doesn't mean Varna. There are only four castes. Sorry. Okay, I get confused myself. There are only four Varnas. In fact, the Krishna Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 13 says, the four Varnas have been created by me in accordance with the different qualities and activities. But although I am their maker, know that I am unchangeable and detached from action. Chatur Varnyam Maya Shristam, guna karma vibhagasa. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhe akartaram avyayam. So this, here Krishna is saying, I am unchangeable, he's talking about transcendence, which also includes the Atman. The Atman is also on the level of transcendence, so is not conditioned by the guna and karma. But we talk about varnas in regard to the management of society.
So what you're saying here, Mataji, is it's not applicable at the level of the Atman, or beyond the so-called material society, beyond the Svadharma, which is the dharma of in the material world, the material body, Varna isn't applicable. It's limited to that sphere.
That's
only.
why
That
Krishna at the end of Bhagavad Gita, after explaining the Swadharma of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, said, Sarvadharman parityaja, mamekam sharanam braja. It means that we should not abandon dharma, but we should abandon the distinction between the Swadharmas. That is the plural. Sarvadharman. It means the differences in dharma. There is a basic samanya dharma, which is a dharma for everyone, which is a sanatana dharma. And then there is a variety of specific dharmas or swadharmas according to the guna and karma, as Gita is explaining here. In accordance to the different qualities and activities of each individual.
So, Mataji, this is interesting. So what you're saying is that John Smith, I'm just figuratively using this word, John Smith's Varna is determined by his gunas and karmas. Is that the same, Mataji? So some teachers would say on their psychosocial characteristics, or is it more nuanced than that? But am I right in thinking that it's guna and karma
just a psychosocial characteristic? In fact, we have made the distinction, I don't know if you remember, we have mentioned in one of our conversations that there are two aspects of Vedic knowledge. One is the material aspect and one is the spiritual aspect. Now, the Karma Kanda or the Purva Mimamsa is the material aspect of the Vedas. Because we have mentioned that the Devas who are worshipped, who are meditated on in the Vedic rituals, yagyas, the Karma Kanda, are material personalities, they have material bodies, which are subject to guna and karma. Now, that doesn't mean that we can give them up altogether, or we can dismiss them or disparage them. Because as long as we have a body, a material body, we need to worship the material devas. Krishna is very clear, chapter 3, before this chapter, in chapter 3, Krishna very clearly says that a human being who enjoys the gifts of the devas and does not reciprocate is a thief.
Yes.
So we need to respect and honor the devas. Some people say, oh, but I am spiritual and transcendental, I don't need to respect the devas. This is stupid, because this is not what Krishna says.
Of course, and certain modern organizations also like to plug the line that, like to sort of say, oh, just go straight to Krishna, quote unquote,
Yeah,
without having to
if you
go
want
through
to go
the-
straight to Krishna, you have to follow Krishna's instructions.
Yes, exactly.
And when Krishna says, honor the devas and reciprocate, feed the devas, contemplate the devas, then you think you're going straight to Krishna, but you think you're more intelligent than Krishna, so you disregard Krishna's instructions.
Yes.
Now, when Krishna says that the people who worship the devas by considering them separate are just offering worship to God, to the Parambrahman, but without the proper knowledge. It doesn't mean that we should not worship the devas. It means that we should worship the devas with the proper knowledge, by seeing the devas as limbs, amsas, parts of the body of Vishnu.
Personalities of Godhead.
Yeah. So, this is the problem. Yanti deva vrta devan. Devan plural, which means also Vishnu.
Okay, so Mataji, yeah. I mean, this is something we've covered. Now, the neophyte in me, this sort of is thinking, well, what's that got to do with my Varna or my so-called Varna?
Okay, we are coming
how
there.
Do connect?
Yeah, the Varnas are only concerning the social aspect that is addressed by the Karma Kanda. Now, in the Karma Kanda, only the Brahmanas are supposed to lead the Karma Kanda rituals for the benefit of the entire society, of all the four Varnas. The Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas can be the Kartas, can be supporting the rituals, can be the author of the yagyas, but they should have Brahmanas who direct the ritual. And the Shudras are not supposed to celebrate these social rituals because they're not able to do it properly. Now,
okay.
On the other hand, on the transcendental level, on the level of Brahman, Atman, Brahman, we don't need to do Vedic rituals in order to realize the Supreme Brahman. That is the path of Tantra. Tantra, Yoga, Bhakti. The path of Tantra, Yoga, Bhakti doesn't care for Varnas.
Yes.
Anyone can approach the personalities of God, the direct personalities of God. Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti.
So what you're saying, Mataji, is that the Karma Kanda ritual, the structure you've described is for Tantra, whereas for Bhakti and Yoga, Varna is not.
No, exactly the opposite.
Okay.
The path of the Karma Kanda is not the tantric path.
Right, okay.
The Tantra is Bhakti and Yoga.
Right.
So, in Tantra, in the traditional Tantra, Yoga and Bhakti, there is no consideration for Varna. Because it is depending on the direct personal guidance of the Guru. While the Karma Kanda, the Guru is actually performing the ritual. In the Tantra, Yoga and Bhakti, the Guru is teaching the disciple how to perform the sadhana. Why? Because the Karma Kanda rituals are social religious activities. So they need to be performed by qualified people for the benefit of the entire society. The Tantra, Yoga, Bhakti, Sadhana is not for society, it's only for the benefit of the disciple.
Uh-huh.
You see the difference?
Yes. Yes.
So, the Varnas are just social, occupational categories. They have nothing to do with spirituality.
Okay. So, in fact, it's mainly societal functioning.
Yeah, it's only societal function.
There's nothing, quote unquote, spiritual about it. It's mainly a structural order.
Correct.
To society. That is its function in reality, basically.
Correct.
Okay, so we've established there in the last few minutes the function of the Varnas, which I think is, again, very misunderstood, because people seem to have all sorts of misconceptions about it.
Yeah, the main misconception about the Varna and caste is birth, body identification with the birthright.
So this is my next question, Mataji, because, and again, I'm going to throw in the Asura's advocate here, because there's all sorts of debate about Varnas being, having a birth element. So let's talk about this, because Varna is obviously something we've heard all about, Devija, the second birth, so to speak.
Yeah,
a lot of Hindus have heard about it. Yeah. A lot of Hindus have accepted now that Varna isn't necessarily done by birth, but Mataji, there's also
Varna is never done by birth.
Exactly. So my point is, Mataji, is that there's also a school of thought which is not confined just to Indian society but global society, is that a son or daughter is more likely to take the characteristics of their parents and therefore end up in a job or in a line or a profession.
It's more likely due to two particular factors. Number one is the level of consciousness of the parents at the time of conception and all along the pregnancy up to the birth. And the other thing is what is going to be cultivated after the birth and going on. These impressions that the newborn, the fetus and the newborn are going to get are called samskaras. Okay, so the samskaras are specifically a characteristic of the twice born. Twice born means you are born once biologically from your parents, and the second birth is when you obtain the initiation from the guru and the Vedic knowledge. So those who are trained and initiated in the Vedic knowledge of the Varnas, not in the spiritual knowledge. Not in the spiritual knowledge. It has nothing to do with the spiritual knowledge. The spiritual knowledge is of Dharma and Vidya is Samanya Dharma. It's not that Brahmanas are twice born because they get spiritual knowledge. This is not a fact. The Brahmanas are twice born when they take initiation, and then they are known as Brahmana because they must work as Brahman. So you probably, I don't know if you heard that famous quote by Atri Rishi. Let me see. Yeah, here. Janmana jayate shudra. Brahma janati ti brahmana. By birth, everyone is born a shudra. A Brahmana is one who knows Brahman. So, this is not a matter of initiation or birth. Because by birth, everyone is born a Shudra.
So the default mode for every baby born is that of a Shudra, basically.
Yeah, because it's the birth of the body.
Indeed.
And
so
when someone is born, they have no training, they have no particular abilities or qualities, or they cannot manifest any realization. They cannot behave like Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya. They're just eating and pooping.
Yes, absolutely. So, first of all, we've established it's not birth. But Mataji, can you talk a bit about Davija, a little bit about what that should look like practically, and what it does look like practically? Because that's again creates a lot of confusion. You've touched on Davija there, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
So we go down where we were before in chapter 18. Verse where we were going to see the guna and karma and swadharma of the four varnas. Okay, so we have. Let me see where it is. Okay. Let me see where it was. Before this, we have, Pritaksvena. Okay. Yes, yeah, okay. Varnas is okay. We have before that. Anyway, so, sorry for this. Okay, we have.
Absolutely, carry on, Mataji.
Okay, we have Tanyapita Karmani. Okay. Let me see.
And so, Mataji, so my point here is that, let's say the average, I'm going to just sort of break it down to very crude terms. Let's say the average person born today, and then they're approaching an age of 12 or 13 or whatnot. Now, is the Davija necessary for everyone, or is it something that applies only for for people who might think they're Brahmanas? Can you talk a little, because there's all sorts of confusion about the
second birth or initiation is for those who are sufficiently qualified and interested. It's depending on the individual nature. So, in the Gurukula system, all the children can go. They don't have to go, then it's not compulsory, but all the children can go to the Gurukula as a residential school of the Guru, under the direct responsibility of the Guru, from the age of 5. Now, the Guru observes everyone, personally, individually, and teaches the basics to everyone, which is called Samanya Dharma, as I was mentioning, which is the Dharma for everyone. Like
that's
the basics.
Foundation.
Yeah.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation, the basics. Like honesty, compassion, cleanliness and self-discipline, and the basics of Vidya as well. Because, we are not the body, so the body is just a vehicle. These are things that anybody can understand. Anyone can understand. Okay? And those who are particularly interested in knowledge are given more instruction in knowledge. And they are prepared more specifically for their particular tendencies. So we have here chapter 18 verses 42 and following. We see the activities, duties of the Brahmana determined by his particular nature are control of his own mind, senses and body, cleanliness, tolerance, simplicity, theoretical and practical knowledge, and living in accordance to Vedic teachings. So when the Guru sees that the child, starting from age 5 to age 10, okay, that a child is demonstrating this tendency, this nature, then, the Guru says, okay, this could be a good Brahmana. So he starts to give the first initiation, like the beginning of the training as Brahmana. Then, the training is completed when the Guru has taught everything that he could teach to that particular student, and then the particular student, is graduated, so it is officially recognized as Brahmana, and goes home and makes a family and starts to do his own job as a Brahmana. Okay, but this can usually happen quite further in time. The first students to leave the Gurukula after completing their studies are the Shudras, because they are not interested in studying so much. They are not interested in learning so much. So they are very simple-minded people.
That's like everywhere where the first school leavers, the people who don't do the higher studies, they leave school at the first available opportunity.
They should be allowed to.
Yes, they do apprenticeships and stuff like
that.
Because
if we don't allow them to leave the school with whatever practical learning they are able to get and interested to get, they will just slow down everybody else.
Yeah, there's no point in putting a
forcing them. In fact,
there's no point putting a would-be plasterer in high school learning quadratic equations.
We see exactly. It's useless. We see, for example, in the United States, where this idea nobody is left behind, so everybody has to pass the exams. There are students, high school students, 75% are not unable to read. There are complete schools. I think in one state they had 28 schools where not one single student is able to read after graduating.
Of course. So you mentioned that the Shudras are the first to go for obvious reasons. They need to develop the practical skills, the apprenticeships, the manual work required. So they're the first to go. I'd love to hear what happens to the rest.
We get that. So we see these 4 verses here, 3 verses. You see, the activities, duties of the Shudra, determined by his particular nature, are the service or assistance to others. So they need to get someone to tell them what to do and to take care of them. Here, Raksha, cows, Vaniyam. Okay, we'll be talking about the Shudras. Then we go, Vedic system. Varna system. We have lots of quotes here that you can go and check in my commentaries. The duty of the Shudra is very simple and only requires sincerity and loyalty to one's employer. It is important to understand that the Shudra is not a slave, an outcast, or an untouchable, Dalit or Pariah. Shudras normally lived in the home of their employers as family members, but they were free to leave if they were not satisfied with the treatment, and sometimes they could be sent away if they did not behave properly. Although the Vedic system encourages individual evolution, sometimes people choose to indulge in lower and degrading tendencies and pick up bad habits. For example, neglecting cleanliness or becoming greedy to the point of stealing or cruel and insensitive towards people and animals, which means going against the Samanya Dharma, the basic Dharma. At this point, the Shudra falls to the level of Anarya and is dismissed from service and expelled from Vedic social life. He becomes a Chandala or Mlecha, that is outside the Varna system, and therefore has no duties whatsoever. The word paricharya means working for others and refers to employment or dependent work, including state government servants of all levels, including ministers, all the bureaucrats and politicians. Anyone who receives a salary for his work is a Shudra. A Kshatriya is an independent protector and does not take orders or salary from anyone, because this would compromise his freedom in supporting Dharma. He can accept gifts or tributes, taxes from the people he protects and cares for, but only in a reasonable amount. A Kshatriya can employ Shudra soldiers in the army under his orders and take care for the maintenance, but their responsibilities and duties are different. They are not permanently on service, but they simply respond to the Kshatriya's call in case of a major attack from the outside. They are private citizens who understand the king needs help in defending their homes and families, and participate to the maneuvers as best as they can, according to their abilities. These voluntary temporary fighters can come from all sections of society, because every limb of the body is eager to help when the entire body is in danger. Therefore, Shudras, Vaishyas, and even Brahmanas can bear weapons and fight on the battlefield in case of emergency. But that does not make them Kshatriyas.
Absolutely, and we all know that in emergency situations, Brahmanas were also good fighters, as were other people. That's
Brahmanas are even more expert because they are the ones who train the Kshatriyas. So the Brahmanas are more qualified as warriors, but it's not their job.
Yes, that makes complete sense, Mataji.
But there is, the emergency is called apad dharma, means dharma is in case of emergency. But the Shudra does not have, the position of a Kshatriya. So, those, for example, those, like policemen who follow orders, they're not Kshatriyas. They're Shudras.
Yes.
Okay, tell.
So, this is really important, and the Shudras obviously come out first. But Mataji, the one that doesn't get as much focus are the Vaishyas. Yeah. And I say it because we live in a world of capitalism, and it's really interesting that Vaishyas are the so-called merchants. I'd love to hear you expand a bit on them.
Yeah. So, the activities, duties of the Vaishya, determined by his particular nature, are agriculture, protection of the cows, the Go Raksha, also Go means planet, not just the cows. So, protector of the planet, nature, and commerce. The activities, so here, Vaishyas and Sudras are grouped down in one single verse because they are less evolved than Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. And then they have less duties. The Shudras considerably less than Vaishyas. This is very different from the present degraded situation in which the higher the social position, the less duties you have and the more rights you have. In the Vedic system, the higher you go in the social position, the more duties you have and the less rights you have. You see that it's a very fundamental difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's reflected in the fact that Shudras have a salary, whereas the others, my understanding is Kshatriyas and Brahmanas don't. Exactly. They have to rely on the others for charity.
They don't have to rely, they have to rely on themselves, not on the charity of others.
No, but in the sense that they have to beg, not beg.
No, they don't have to beg. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
They don't have to beg. Those who beg are basically the brahmacharis and the sannyasis.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
The brahmanas ask for donations.
Yeah, donations. That should be the word.
That's
so the
a very different position.
The Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas are relying on donations, appropriate donations.
Yeah, but Vaishyas as well.
Right.
Because the Vaishya gets the basic resources, from the king of the Brahmanas. They get the land and the cows. But all the three upper Varnas, they have to rely on themselves. They don't depend on anyone else. While the Shudras depend on others, on employers, because they cannot take care of themselves.
So, Mataji, I'm going to ask you another very important question. In traditional Vedic society, who was the wealthiest of the four Varnas, Mataji?
Oh, definitely it's a Vaishya. But the Vaishya is using his wealth for the benefit of society. It's like the belly of the social body. If the stomach is, the stomach is the one that is receiving all the food, and but it has to distribute it, because if it doesn't distribute the food to the rest of the body, the entire body gets sick. So the Vaishyas can never take the position, can never use their wealth to get political power. And they can never accumulate too much wealth. Because if they accumulate too much wealth, the Kshatriya will intervene and take away the wealth that is accumulated and not used for the benefit of society. You have read the Rig Veda. That is...
Yes, the Dasu. The Dasu and the Arya.
That is one Rig to Indra.
Correct.
It calls on the Kshatriya king, like Indra defeated what was his name? Ritrasura?
Yes, absolutely. And Indra was the one who released the rains from the clouds,
exactly,
so to speak.
So, and that hymn to Indra in the Rig Veda says that the king, a human society, should do the same. He should go to, those bad people who accumulate wealth without using for the benefit of the entire society, and break their safe, their stores, and distribute the rain.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You say the Vaishya was the wealthiest, though, generally.
They're the wealthiest, but in a sense that, they are those who handle wealth. Now, the Kshatriyas collect taxes and tributes from the Vaishyas mostly, and they can have a treasury for the kingdom. But they shouldn't use a treasury for their own sense gratification. The Vaishyas have a little more license for sense gratification, and the Shudras are totally free to accumulate as much as they want. In fact, the Shudras not only get the maintenance and everything, but they get a lot of gifts. And there are some Shudras who are independent, who instead of working for a particular employer, they work, they have different customers. They work in general for society. Like, for example, dancers and artists. And they can become very wealthy, very rich indeed, more than the Vaishyas.
Interesting. And Mataji, on that note, so we've touched on them. and we've touched on, obviously, capitalism is a perversion of the Vaishya
Yeah.
sort of mindset. We then move on to the Brahmanas. Now, Mataji,
Okay,
this is
we
true.
start
Yeah.
with we go through the kshatriyas first.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The activities, duties of the kshatriya determined by his particular nature are heroism, charisma, determination, resourcefulness, steadiness in battle, charity, and sense of leadership. So the Bhagavad Purana confirms, the characteristics of the kshatriya: heroism, chivalry, determination, charisma, detachment from possessions, self-control, obedience to Brahmana, satisfaction and truthfulness. And Teja Balam Dhriti charisma, bodily strength, determination, heroism, tolerance, generosity, detachment from possessions, charity. So, the kshatriya cannot accumulate for himself or for his family. Okay. The expression Ishvara Bhava, controlling nature, could also be translated as lordly attitude, because Ishvara means Lord. A tendency to be bossy is not a bad thing, as it does not mean bullying people around to impose one's will over others whimsically. If the bossy individual is qualified and properly trained and capable to lead, direct and manage others, society should appreciate this quality and use it to its benefit instead of resenting it on the basis of a delusional belief in the complete equality of all human beings. The captain of a ship must have total authority and total power, because otherwise the ship will sink. And the kshatriya is the one who is responsible for managing all the people in society. This means he is responsible. Not only has the power, he also has the responsibility. So when anything goes wrong, it's not, it's the fault of this and that. No, it's his responsibility to get the things working properly.
The book stops with the kshatriya, basically, in essence, Mataji.
Sorry?
The book stops with the kshatriya if things go wrong from a leadership point of view.
Of course. The responsibility is there, because the king is responsible. The king must have the assembly and obey the brahmanas, but not in the sense that the brahmanas should decide how to rule society, how to manage society. The brahmanas is giving orders as instructions about dharma and vidya. So the brahmanas say, no, you have to protect the prajas. The brahmanas are not saying go to do war against this and that. Obeying the orders of the brahmanas, that's a different idea. That what is happening, what could happen, in a distorted manner. Today, the intellectuals are owned by the Vaishyas and the Kshatriyas.
Yes, and I think even traditionalists have stated that, they've said that this is the case. Now, Mataji, there is confusion between what is known as a Chakravarti and what is known like and a Kshatriya, because you've mentioned Kshatriya.
A Chakravarti is usually translated as emperor. But it's not, the idea of imperialism as we know it today has nothing to do with the Vedic system. The Chakravarti in the Vedic system is a king who is the head of an alliance of kings. Chakra means wheel. A chakra is round. It's not a pyramid. In the European medieval system, the emperor has vassals who have to swear loyalty, and they are appointed by the king. Now, the Chakravarti is not appointing any king, any other king. He doesn't have any vassals. He's just the head of an alliance. And because he's accepted as the head of the alliance because of his greater abilities and qualities and capabilities and everything, the other kings of the alliance are contributing tributes for the extra activities, the extra duties that the Chakravarti is taking up for himself, which means, for example, patrolling the border of the entire region, maintaining the roads and the communication, the traveling routes, between one kingdom and another. Or financing great centers of learning or spirituality, that everybody can enjoy and use. But that is common project. It's not that the emperor, it's not an emperor who's controlling the other kingdoms. In the Vedic system, a kingdom is just one city. One city with an agricultural belt around it and a forest belt around it. And each kingdom is totally independent.
Right.
But they
totally
can,
understand.
they can, they can be, they can have alliances. If the best king, is elected as the head of the alliance, he is called a Chakravarti.
Right, I understand. So it's not necessarily, sometimes there's a misconception that it's a priestly king or something like that. It's not like a fusion between the Brahmana and the Kshatriya. It's not like a warrior soldier, so to speak.
No, that's a typical That's a typical Zoroastrian idea, which becomes also a basis for the Abrahamic ideologies.
Yes, correct.
What is could be mistaken for this idea of priest king is the Rajarishi.
Yes.
But the Rajarishi or Rajarshi is not a priest king. He is a king who is also attained the transcendental realization. He's not working as a Brahmana, he's not working as a priest, he's still working as a king. But, he has a more, a wider perspective. He's more qualified than a usual Kshatriya. But still, he has to do the Kshatriya work.
Understood.
Brahmanas can never become kings.
So this is interesting because there's a viewpoint in, it's mainly Western ones to be absolutely honest, that you can change Varnas. Is that true, Mataji, or not, basically?
No, we can change Varnas just like we change Gunas and Karma. In fact, the Vedic system is based on the concept that we should work to improve our individual personal qualifications.
So it's not a big thing to change Varnas?
Absolutely not.
Because, again, it's been taught that it's a really big thing and it doesn't happen to many people.
No, that, people who say that it is a big thing to change Varna, or you cannot even change Varna because that's what you are born like that. They are, totally confused by the bodily identification. In fact, when Krishna says it's better to perform one's duty even if in an imperfect manner, rather than perform the duty of others perfectly.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
That means that if you are overly qualified for a particular duty, that's not your duty. You need to make an effort. Yeah.
You should be struggling.
Yeah, but struggling, you should make an effort to improve yourself, to learn.
If you're finding it too easy, it's not for you, effectively, basically.
Exactly, it's not your duty. So, naturally, we said the Shudras don't have duties or responsibilities. They just have to assist, and they work, basically, a Shudra works with his or her body. Hands and body, dancer, artist, servant, cook, carrying stuff, and, things that require the body action.
Indeed.
Now, crafts people work with their body, but at some point, if they become really good crafts people, they can accept apprentices. And they can hire workers under themselves. They can become employers in turn. In the sense, they take responsibility for their apprentices. In this way, they gradually become Vaishyas. Then, when a Vaishya has become a very good Vaishya, very expert, very successful, he is a very good entrepreneur and has a lot of people working under him and everything, then gradually he becomes a Kshatriya because he has to protect these people. He has to manage these people, protect these people and the animals that are working for him. And that's the duty of the Kshatriya, protecting the praja, taking care of the praja. So, in the same way, when a Kshatriya is able to, is a very good Kshatriya, he is a very detached from his own sense gratification, is very detached from possessions, like the qualities of the Kshatriyas we have just seen, and he's very charitable and he's very responsible, he's willing to sacrifice himself, and he, at some point, he starts to see the prajas as people, as Atman, and he develops a transcendental vision. He can see that actually all the prajas are all Atman. And that makes him a Brahmana.
I totally understand. I mean, this process is not really appreciated or understood or even known of, if truth be told. So I think
but it's very evident, logical and evident from
yes.
Only also from the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and from the the general instructions we can find in the Shastra.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. So the next question, Mataji, is that there's a viewpoint that only Brahmanas are qualified to teach the Vedic the Vedas, and only qualified to perform to say various mantras. And I'd love to hear your take on that, Mataji.
Yeah. So we go up. So we have seen. Sometimes unqualified persons pose as Kshatriyas, but they should be exposed and neutralized by genuine Kshatriyas or Brahmanas. They are described as Ripalingadharam, merely showing the appearance and insignia of kings. Prominent example can be found, blah blah. This is a description of the unqualified kings of Kali Yuga. These mlechas in the form of kings will be killing, injuring women, children, cows, the planet, and the twice-born, going after the wives and wealth of others. They will be mentally and emotionally unstable, rather weak mentally and physically, and short-lived. Covered by rajas and tamas, they will not perform any proper duty or auspicious ritual, but they devour the praja. So let's go to see who are the actual brahmanas. And this is the biggest part of it. So the activities and duties of the brahmana, determined by his particular nature, means individual nature. Okay, sva-bhava, brahmana svabhavajam, born from his particular mentality and nature. Okay, are control of his own mind, senses and body. Cleanliness, tolerance, simplicity, theoretical and practical knowledge, and living in accordance to Vedic teachings. So these are the qualities that are required in order to teach. A kshatriya needs a different type of tolerance. A kshatriya is has to tolerate the hardships on himself, on his own body, and mind. But he is not supposed to tolerate the bad behavior of others, because that's his job, to stop the bad behaviors from harming society. But the brahmanas has to tolerate. The brahmana can never take the position of the kshatriya, because there must be a very different, distinct separation from of religious power from government power. Material power, spiritual power, they can never sit together. Because when you have material power over people, you cannot help them transcend the material identification. You cannot help them learn.
Yes.
Because learning is based on the freedom of choice. If you don't have the freedom of making mistakes, how are you going to learn? The kshatriya cannot afford to allow people to make mistakes, because his job is to protect society. When you make a mistake, you are endangering society. So the kshatriya has the duty to stop you from making the mistakes. But what kind of mistakes you have to, the kshatriya is entitled to intervene about? Aggressions. Only the mistakes that are endangering and damaging society and the innocent people, and other people. If you make a mistake in the sense that you break your your pot, you break your plate or whatever, the kshatriya is not his problem to punish you. The kshatriya has to take care of helping you to, if you need a plate and need a pot, you go to the kshatriya and ask for help and go, sorry, my house, I made a mistake, I let the candle, on a wooden cabinet, so my house burned down. Okay, that was a mistake. So you go to the kshatriya and say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake, please help me. The kshatriya say, okay, this is, the money, the materials and stuff you need to rebuild your house. But the brahmanas will say, okay, do you see what mistakes you made?
Yes, there's a difference, isn't there, Mataji?
It's a totally different job. The brahmana can never punish people for making mistakes. The brahmanas can only stop bad kings if there is no good kshatriya who can stop the bad kshatriya.
That makes complete sense, Mataji.
And then, after stopping the bad kshatriyas, the brahmanas will step back and let the good kshatriya take over. They will never become kings themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mataji, this has been a wonderful description of the various Varnas. Now, John Smith is sitting here now,
Yeah.
Who's basically acquainted with the basics of Vedic knowledge, and he's thinking, look, you know what? I'm sitting here in my late 30s or 40s or 20s or whatever age it might be. I'm thinking, is there any sense in me determining my Varna at this stage, at this late stage? I've not been to a Gurukul. I'm not 5 years old. How do I do that? If I should do that at all?
The determination of one's Varna is not just made by the Guru in the Gurukul. It can be done by any Brahmana, by the king, by the assembly of Brahmanas, on the observation of the actual guna and karma of each individual. So, if you have those qualities and activities, of one Varna rather than another, you are automatically a member of that Varna for which you are qualified. You just need, if you want to be recognized socially, you go to any Brahmana at any point of your life, and the Brahmana will watch what you're actually doing, if you actually have those qualities, or you're just thinking you have those qualities. Because that's the business of the Brahmana. He has the duty to teach. Teaching means to teach. In order to teach, you have to see, to understand the position of each student, if they have actually understood the lesson or not. So the Brahmana is supposed to be able to recognize, if a person actually has these qualities or not. At any age, you can be 5, you can be 15, you can be 30, you can be 50, doesn't matter. The qualities, the characteristics, the guna and karma that you have can be recognized by any genuine Brahmana. So the genuine Brahmana will say, you are a Kshatriya, so you should do the Kshatriya Swadharma,
That takes us nicely to my next question. You literally read my mind on this, which is, what is the relationship, if any, Mataji, between the 4 Varnas and modern jobs? So I'll give you an example. Is a teacher or someone who likes to teach necessarily a Brahmana? Or you've mentioned the analogy between an ordinary soldier and a commander, a Shudra versus a Kshatriya, compared to a Kshatriya. Well, what's the relationship between,
it's a level of qualification. If you are a good teacher, you already are a Brahmana. Because you can control your mind, senses and body, you're tolerant, you understand simplicity, you have theoretical and practical knowledge. If you are a good teacher, if you are a bad teacher, a Shudra teacher, you just go in, to the class and open the book and just read the book. And you don't, you're not able to understand what the students have understood. You are not able to to stimulate
I get you. It's the difference between the teacher who teaches his students what to think and the teacher that teaches his students how to think.
Exactly.
There's a difference.
In the same way, the Shudra soldier is not a very good warrior. Because, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't understand strategy. A real Kshatriya is good at strategy. He knows where to go, what to do. So he's, not only he is engaging himself in the battle, in a strategical manner, but he can also direct the others strategically. But a Shudra soldier doesn't understand anything about strategy.
Yeah, a Shudra soldier is the equivalent of a private or something like that, in essence, basically, reality. So with that, Mataji, can that analogy be applied for politicians? So you get like Shudra politicians, and then you get the actual leaders of
which I
civilizations.
wouldn't call them politicians, I would call them statesmen.
Or ministers or something like
But
that.
no, minister is still someone who, is not qualified enough today as a politician, because the ministers as politicians, they don't serve the people, they serve their party, they serve the government. So they're Shudras.
Indeed.
And in the same way, a Vaishya, you can have farmers, because they said the duty of the Vaishya is agriculture, and protection of the cow and the planet. So you can have, farmers who just know how to, dig holes, and cut the harvest. But those are Shudra Vaishyas. A real Vaishya, is much more qualified. He knows, how to actually get the land to prosper. It's not just growing potatoes.
And I guess it's the same with medicine as well.
Same with medicines. We have, Shudra doctors who just, follow the government policies. And they know, okay, this is the appendix, and if you have the infection of the appendix, you cut here and cut it off.
I understand.
But a Brahmana doctor is someone who knows how the appendicitis comes, why the infection comes.
Yes.
You see the difference? Yeah.
I do. So this is my next question, nicely leading on. How did it go wrong? Was it due to the Kali Yuga? Did it distort itself? And what is the future of Varna in the Kali Yuga, Mataji? This is our final point. I'm conscious we've passed the hour, so I'd love to hear this, because I've been wanting to hear this from you. Where did it go wrong? How did it go wrong? And what's the future of Varna in the Kali Yuga in your mind?
Yeah, well, what went wrong? We have, exactly the Kali Yuga. When if you see here the my book Why I Became a Hindu, we have a complete chapter about this point, how we moved from the Varna to the caste system. That was because of the degradation of the Brahmanas, who started to be non-qualified. If you remember in the Bhagavad Purana, when we have, precisely in first canto, we have Maharaj Parikshit sees the arrival of the Kali Purusha, the age of Kali, and what is the first sign, the first symptom of the Kali Yuga? Is the Shringi boy who thinks of himself as being a Brahmana because he's the son of a Brahmana. So he takes upon himself to punish the Kshatriya, which is not the duty of the Brahmana. Brahmana needs to teach, not to punish the king for his mistakes. He can, remove the king. Together with the other Brahmanas, they can decide to remove a king if the king is actually damaging society. But not because, it seems to have made a mistake like disrespecting a Brahmana.
Yeah. Or is that a personal insult? Basically?
Yeah, exactly, because a Brahmana is very tolerant.
Yeah, he feels offended by something.
Exactly. So that is not the job of the Brahmana. So that is the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The Brahmanas, became less and less qualified, and when the Brahmanas are less qualified, the Kshatriyas are also becoming less qualified. And when the Kshatriyas become less qualified, then the void is created in which the Vaishyas, become politicians. Until at the end, when the Kali Yuga is saying that Shudras will take the position of kings. And this is the politicians. The bureaucrats and politicians are just Shudras. So they get a lot of money. And they're very greedy.
Indeed.
And they think that the people, the population, is there to serve them, not the other way around. So human beings are called human resources.
So, in effect, Mataji, the Varna system was degraded way before colonialism landed on India's shores. The Varna system had already gone into significant decline.
Already when Siddhartha Gautama appeared, the Brahmanas had already gone a bit gaga. And the next
and the colonials only
the British took advantage, especially they made the system, the social system, strictly hereditary, because they introduced the census. Until the first census introduced by the British colonial regime, anyone could change caste, either upgrading or degrading, mostly degrading. But that was not hereditary. It was not strictly, rigidly, applied. Because anyone could become qualified or disqualified.
So Manusmriti doesn't talk of birth caste effectively.
No. In fact, if there is any edition of the Manusmriti or other Shastra that is, presenting a view, a perspective that is contrary to Dharma and to the basics, like for example here Bhagavad Gita, they must have been tampered with. And if we go here, we go again. Astika. If the quality is not present, the individual can almost be a Brahma Bandhu, or relative of a Brahmana. And also a Kshatriya Bandhu, relative of a Kshatriya. It's not just for, family. Jnana Vijnana Astika, Lokika Shraddha, the next karma, simplicity, honesty, Arjavam, Kshanti. Then again, Bhagavata Purana, Narada Muni explains what are the characteristics of the Brahmana. Mahabharata, Maharaj Yudhishthira states Dharma, Brahmana also behave in accordance with Dharma. First of all, he must be truthful and able to control his own senses. He must be austere, detached, humble and tolerant. Must not envy anyone. He must be expert in the performance of sacrifice and distribute his possessions in charity. He must be determined in the study of Vedic scriptures and religious activities. These are the 12 fundamental qualities of a Brahmana. If these qualities listed as a characteristic of Brahmans are found in a Shudra or a person born in a Shudra family, such person must never be called a Shudra. Just like a Brahmana, or it means a person born in a Brahmana family, is not a Brahmana if he lacks these qualities. And we go also the Rig Veda, Samhita, Tarva, Yajur, blah, 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 Mahabharata, Manu Samhita.
Sure. So, Matsuji, I've got one final question for you.
I know.
Which is effectively, how do you see Varna? How do you see the Varna system as the Kali Yuga rolls on? Is it a question of, it's not a question no longer of whole societies, but rather individuals striving to learn Dharma and adopt Varna? Do you have very low expectations? I'd like to hear your
low expectations. We don't have any expectation. The point is, we can always improve. Even if we are utterly unqualified, we can become more qualified. We should encourage people to develop positive qualities, positive qualifications, good qualification. So if someone is interested in studying, let's encourage him to become a Brahmana. Maybe it will be Kali Yuga Brahmana, but still better than a Chandala. So it is important to understand what are the activities that Brahmanas must never do if they want to be considered Brahmanas. Like, for example, Mahabharata, Shanti Parva. A Brahmana who commits violent acts, for example in the consumption of vegetarian foods, who lies and cheats, who's greedy, impure, and engages in any activity in order to earn a livelihood, is degraded to the position of Shudra. Precisely because he eats and drinks anything without discrimination and is attached to the material things and to the idea of making money, he has abandoned Vedic dharma and ethical behavior, and is called a Shudra.
I understand, Mataji. Totally understand.
So, we start with people who want to be called Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya. That they need to understand that in order to consider themselves, to ask, to be called such and such, they need to at least know what they're supposed to do and not to do. Then there is no shame in accepting, okay, I'm not qualified as a Brahmana, I'm not qualified as a Kshatriya, I'm not qualified as a Vaishya, okay, I'm just a Shudra. At least let's try to be good Shudras. It's not that Shudras cannot study the Vedas. The Shudras are not required to study the Vedas. And of course they cannot teach the Vedas if they don't have the understanding. But they can study.
Yes. Absolutely. And that is fundamentally important. And I think that last bit here has been very important because there's a difference between studying it and qualified to teach.
Yeah.
There is a big difference, isn't there, Matt?
Yep.
So, and I think you've reinforced that. Are there any areas you feel we haven't covered in this basic introduction?
I think we are already past the hour.
No, but do you think, are there any final points that you feel?
No, I think we covered all of it, but we can, if any other points come up, we can discuss next time.
Wonderful, Matthew. I'd love to thank you for your time, and also it's been wonderful to learn these insights, and thank you for your seva, Mataji. My obeisances to you once again.
Jai Shriman Narayana.
Jai Shriman Narayana. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.